Appalachia, legends whisper of unseen spirits and shadowy figures. Don't forget to subscribe as we step deep into the misty woods to uncover what many refuse to talk about. Let's take a look.
Would you like to know the real reason Appalachia is haunted and scary? Probably because everybody has their whole family buried in their backyard. No, seriously, it's very common. Like, everybody has a family cemetery in their backyard here. My family cemetery is actually across from my parents' house.
I was laying in bed last night trying to fall asleep, and I suddenly remembered this story, and I cannot believe I haven't told y'all yet. It's literally like the plot to a scary movie, except it's real life. Years and years ago, a friend of mine was not feeling too well and went and admitted herself into a mental health facility. After being admitted, she wound up staying for 2 weeks. During that time, she got acquainted with some of the other patients, through therapy and being outside on the grounds together. There was this old lady there, and I think her name was Irma Jean. Now, for some reason, Irma Jean took an extra liking to my friend. Irma Jean was like this 72-year-old lady, very small, so she was probably like 4'9", like child-sized. She said she always wore this purple jumpsuit, so like a purple sweater and purple sweatpants. Anytime anybody saw Irma Jean, she was always just doing yoga. She was very, very limber for her age. Like, I'm talking like she'd have her legs up by her head. And remember, they are in a mental health facility, and she's like a long-term patient, not somebody that's just there for a little bit of help. She actually has some big issues. One of Irma Jean's delusions was that she was fully convinced that my friend was her cousin, Betty Lou, who she said was a Dallas Cowboys cheerleader. So every time she'd see my friend, she'd be like, "Betty Lou, my cousin, the cheerleader, Dallas Cowboys cheerleader." And my friend would be like, "I used to be a cheerleader, yes, but I'm not your cousin and my name's not Betty Lou." My friend was really weirded out by this, but she didn't want to cause any trouble, so she just tried her best to ignore it and just be friendly to this lady. She said one day she remembers she was out in the courtyard and she looks up and in one of the windows, like in the upper part of the building, there stands Irma Jean with her leg up beside her head, just staring down at her. Just picture a 4'9", like 70-year-old lady in a purple jumpsuit with her foot up beside her head that thinks you are her cousin Betty Lou staring down at you from an upper window. I haven't even got to the bad part yet. It gets so much worse. So at this mental health facility, at night, they had to keep their doors open because the nurses would come around and make their rounds and check on everybody and just make sure everybody was okay. For safety reasons, nobody was allowed to close or lock their door. On my friend's 14th night there, she's awoken in the middle of the night to what feels like somebody playing with her hair. She rolls over, and what does she see? You guessed it, Irma Jean. She's in my friend's bed, playing with her hair, braiding it. My friend freaks out. But who wouldn't? That's like something you see in a scary movie, legitimately. So she starts yelling at her, and she's like, "Get the my room right now, get out of here." And Irma Jean starts crying, telling my friend, "No, you're my cousin, please let me stay." So my friend goes to the nurse station, and she's like, "Hey, y'all gotta deal with this lady. She was just in my bed playing with my hair, and now she's crying, saying I'm her cousin. I don't know her. I don't know what to do. I got to go to sleep. I got to get out of here." She's literally just spazzing at this point. She wants to go home. She's there to get help with her mental health, and she's just being harassed at this point. She's so scared. They tell my friend that for the night that she can lock her door, and they would just unlock it to come make their rounds to check on her. My friend said not even 2 minutes go by when she starts hearing a on her door, followed by Irma Jean screaming, crying, saying, "My cousin, Betty Lou, let me in, my cousin, oh my cousin." She said she hears the sounds of her screams start to get further and further away, so she goes outside to see what's going on. She said it was like something that you see in a movie, all these nurses had Irma Jean down and they give her injection of some kind, and she calmed down, and they locked Irma Jean in the nurses' station for the night, so she was sleeping in this glass room where everybody could look into her. My friend checked herself out and went home the very next morning. What she expected to be helpful for her mental health wound up being the most terrifying experience she ever had in her entire life.
My second most terrifying experience that I had happened recently. So what I do is I get my helmet on, I'm throwing my gear into my bag as soon as I can, as quickly as I can, as a means of protection as well. I kind of got a little bit of flack at that too, but what I was essentially trying to do was pad as much as I could into like one location in case I needed to use it kind of as a shield or something like that. I was really trying to put myself in the best possible position to be able to fight off something like this. So I jump on the bike. I am just pedaling. I have that thing just going full freaking wide open, trying to get the heck out of these mountains. That entire ride was much more scary than the actual scream that I had heard, because when you're on an e-bike like that or on a motorcycle like this, you're kind of vulnerable. It's very easy for something to just plow you and just take you, right off of the bike. From that moment on, I've been really kind of almost scared to go into this area, because there's just so much evidence to suggest that there's something else going on other that we do not really know. There's several people go missing. There's several people have just traumatic experiences. At one point, I did find a massive cage even set up in this area. I don't know what they were trapping. It could be wild pigs, but I've never seen a cage that big. And it was square. It wasn't a round pig cage, So that is what it is.
So, very creepy moment right now. I always have creepy moments at the barn at night, but it's like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and I've been bringing the horses in the evening and stalling them and then turning them out in the morning. So when I get here, I put hay in all the stalls, water, feed, whatever, and then I call everybody in and put them in their stall. Well, so I'm standing in the barn. I've got all 5 dogs with me. They're all standing in the barn hallway with me. And I hear this noise. And so I look over and I see Rain, which is my red Merlossie, standing in the doorway. And I was like, oh, it's just Rain, no big deal. So I'm down at the end of the barn down here, which is very dark. You can see behind me. This is a stall, but it's very dark. And I turn around and go walking down the hallway, and I find a bottle of water sitting in the middle of the hallway. Mr. Hensley just pulled in. Sitting in the hallway, like somebody placed it there. Like, hold on. Sitting right here. There's no way it fell right there. I would have seen it when I walked in, because, you would walk from the door here, and I would have come through and walked past it to go to all of the stalls. That was not there when I came in. The dogs did not mess with it. It must have been sitting on the ground for a while, because it's partially drank, and it's got bird poop on it. And it's not frozen. Not frozen at all. Most of my water has had ice on it, but this is not frozen. So I see the bottle of water. That freaks me out. I'm here by myself. I'm in the dark. I'm going to have my dogs. But I know somebody didn't come in here and set it down, because the dogs were with me. They would have, went to whoever walked in the barn. So I called Blaze, so that way, I'm on the phone with him. I could talk to him, keep doing what I'm doing. Well, then I hear one of the dogs going off in the woods, and it's a bark I don't recognize. So I go walking out of the barn. I turn my headlamp on, and Maddie is in the woods down by the pond, my blue heeler, losing it. Shawnee's in here. So here's the thing. Maddie doesn't bark. That's why I didn't know who it was, because I've never heard her bark before. So I walk out there. I'm trying not to, look in the woods, because we're in Appalachia. I walk out there and I'm like, something's barking in the woods. Hey! And so I'm still on the phone with Blaze. I'm like, I have no clue what's going on. But yeah, so slightly freaked out right now, because, there's a water bottle placed in my barn hallway. But yeah.
Here's the thing. You don't have to believe these stories. Believe what you want. But the truth is, people go missing in Appalachia all the time. Unexplained. They are unable to find their bodies. And I'm getting hundreds of DMs of stories that have happened to people that are unexplained. So growing up, John and his cousins would always spend their summers at his grandma's family farmhouse. This was located in western North Carolina near Black Mountain, but it was very remote back in what they would call the holler. It was a quaint little farmhouse, 2 bedrooms. There was a creek that ran out the front of the farmhouse, and the kids would often go fishing. Now, this was a smaller creek, so he said they would just fish for small, rainbow trout or brown trout. He said they would get out there and, wade in the creek, but it never came up higher than usually, their thigh level. They fished in front of the house for a little bit that evening, but didn't catch anything, and they decided to kind of go up the creek a little ways. His one cousin found a little spot he wanted to fish at, but John kept going up the creek a ways. So John's grandma had this old black lab that would follow them around when they were outside fishing. The dog followed John up the creek with him, and then John found a place that looked like it was good to fish. He was fishing for about 5 minutes or so when he said the dog got up and started growling at the water. He said this was very odd behavior for the dog because the dog wasn't like the type to be this way. It was a very docile dog. But the dog just kept staring into like the center of the creek and growling. And then John hooks a fish and he says this fish feels massive. Does not feel like a little brown trout that he's normally used to catching. But as he's reeling this fish in, it gets like stuck, and he thinks that at this point it's gotten tangled or caught under some branches or something. So he kind of starts to wade out into the deeper part of the water to go like unhook the fish. He says as he's wading out there, the dog is just absolutely going ballistic, barking, 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 and growling. But once he gets to where he feels like his line is tangled up, he feels 2 hands grab his ankles. And then whatever it is that grabbed him pulled him under. He said he felt like the life was being absolutely sucked out of him. Whatever had a hold of his ankles refused to let go. He said at times he was able to break the surface and breathe and scream for help, but then he would feel it jerk him back under again. He can still hear the dog barking. He's screaming, he's kicking, he's splashing. And then thankfully, his cousin, because of all the commotion, ran over and pulled him up out of this area of the creek. As soon as his cousin pulls him free, John just takes off running for the creek bank. And his cousin is like, dude, what is going on? What is happening? And John's like, you got to get out of the water. You got to get out of the water. His cousin runs over to him and John's like, dude, something was pulling me under. Something was pulling me under. They're standing on the side of the creek bank now, looking into the water, and they don't see anything. But John looks down at his ankles and pulls up his pant leg, and he's got bruising around both ankles. The dog is whimpering, and both of the kids are very freaked out, and they're like, we've got to go tell grandma. They go tell their grandmother what happened, and John said that his grandmother's face just turned like pale, and you could tell she was absolutely horrified. But in an effort to like calm them down, she was like, oh, it's just you boys out there wading around, causing bruises on your ankles. Nothing got you. John said they never went back to fish in the creek again. And to this day, he still has no idea what grabbed him. And the dog will not go down to the waterbed either.
This is an Appalachian story, but it involves pretty much every terrifying thing that you could think of that could happen in Appalachia, and this one terrified me. So this guy grew up in Henderson Ridge, and he grew up knowing these rules. Don't whistle after dark, don't answer the woods if the woods answer you, and if you see something in the woods that looks almost right, go inside. Now, he didn't take these rules seriously until the fall his cousin Jess moved in. One day, him and Jess are patching a fence line behind the house when they both hear their names being called, like by the tree line. First Brian's name, clear as a hello, and then Jess's. Here was the strange thing. It sounded just like his mother, as if she was tired. The only problem was his mother was in town closing up a pharmacy. So he looks down at his phone, and then he looks at the driveway, and his mom's car is gone. So they're just sitting there for a second waiting for their names to be called. They're just waiting to see if this thing says anything else. So at this point, they tell themselves that it's just the neighbors fooling around. But the next night, something stranger would happen. So the next night, they're inside when they start hearing something pacing the gravel beside the porch. Slow, deliberate rhythm, like a boot heel, then a scuff, then a quiet. Scary thing is his dog wasn't barking. He went and hid underneath a chair, and he was shaking so bad that his heels started to click. Brian decides that he's going to open the door because this dude is brave. So he walks over to the door and he opens it, but all he can see is fog. A week later, his cousin begs him to ride into town for a late shift. He says yes, and they take what's called the Ridge Road. No shoulder, tight turns, and deer everywhere. Just past this old sawmill, his headlights catch this shape standing in the ditch. Then the figure starts rising up onto the asphalt, and he said that this thing looked like a deer if somebody were to describe a deer who had never seen a deer before, if that makes sense. The legs were too long and they were bending the wrong way, and its head was cocked to the side. It just made him incredibly uncomfortable. It stared straight through the glass right at him, the way that a person does, and he swears this thing did not blink. Jess just whispers to him, "Don't say anything. Brian just eases around it, and then he looks in the rearview mirror, and this thing is taking 3 steps towards him, then another, then it just drops out of the light as if the road had swallowed it. He said for the rest of the ride, they were so freaked out, they didn't even talk to each other until they got to Main Street. So after midnight, he drives home, and he drives down the same road, and his radio starts to fizz out, and it fizzes out normally where it does when he passes this rock cut. Right as the static rose, his mom's voice rose over it. She sounded calm and ordinary, and she said, "Pull over for a second." He said that he did, and his hand had already tapped the blinker when all of a sudden those rules rose up in his head. "Do not let it get you out of the car," he kept thinking, and then the voice just stopped. It didn't repeat. 2 nights later, the mimicry got mean. He woke up at 3 a.m. to his dog's low growling under the bed. His house had this weird pressurized quiet that they get before a storm, except for the forecast was clear. Then a knock at the door, not frantic. 3 measured taps. He goes to check the clock to see what time it is, and it's 3:12 a.m. Then he hears another knock at the same pace. Then his mother's hushed voice comes through the wood and says, "Honey, open up. I forgot my keys." He was halfway down the hall before the details snapped in place. His mother never called him honey. She calls him kid like she did when he was 6 years old, and if she left her keys in town, she would have called him. So he just immediately stops moving, but then the voice tries again. This time it sounds like a singer flipping flat, like, "Honey, let me in, it's cold." This time his dog just starts going crazy. He's barking at the door, he's growling, he's snarling. So Brian goes to the kitchen window and he just lifts the corner of the shades. There was no one there, no shadow, nothing. But then he hears it again, 3 knocks. He said that he actually answered, and he said, Who is it?" But silence, then a new voice, but a child this time, or like an adult aiming to be a child. It said, "It's Jess. I don't feel right." That's when he made a rule of his own. No one gets in the house after dark unless I see their face in daylight. So he says, "Go to the front door, I'll meet you there." Nothing moved on the porch, but the dog's hackles stayed up, and then he started counting to 60. No steps, no boards, no weight shifting, but finally from the wrong side of the kitchen, outside of the far window over the sink, his mother's voice again. He hears her say, "Don't make this hard." He didn't sleep a wink that night, and then later on that day, when the sun finally rose up, he walks outside and he checks for handprints, footprints, nothing. It doesn't even look like a raccoon was out there. 2 days later, Jess comes home from the diner, and she's completely shaken. I'm assuming this is where she works. She said near the rock cut where the radio normally dies, she had seen a shape in the road. She said it was in the middle of the road this time, though, and it was standing in her headlights, and it was super tall, taller than a man, but wrong like a deer. She says that its legs were bent backwards, and as soon as she eased closer to it, it cocked its head really fast towards her and just watched her drive by. She said she started to feel this pressure behind her eyes like a migraine was starting, and then her hands went numb on the steering wheel. She went 30 yards past it, looks back in the mirror, and it is gone. So he said that after this, they did what normal mountain people do, and they asked around without saying too much, and people had stuff to say. One man said that he had chased a lame buck from his garden a week before, but as soon as it got to the tree line, it started walking on 2 legs. Another woman heard her husband calling from her back steps while he was 2 counties away hauling cattle. And this is the creepiest one. A little boy from his church said that he heard his grandmother singing outside of a trailer. Only problem, his grandmother had passed away a week before. The next night around 2:40 p.m., the wind kind of kicked up a lot. It wasn't storming, but it was very windy, and his lamp outside went out. It went black. He was on the couch with his dog under his knees and in his lap, when suddenly he heard footsteps coming up on the gravel. First heavy, then light, almost if they were testing the weight, like a human. Then it stopped 6 inches from the back door, and he said that he literally stopped breathing. The knob turned a fraction and then stopped against the lock deadbolt. He said a full minute passes, and then the steps went down again. First slow, then quicker, then like a scuff, like something pawed the gravel and then sprinted away on 4 legs. He said the next day when it turned daylight, he went outside to check to see if there was any traffic tracks anywhere. And again, there were no tracks. One thing that there was, though, it was a scratch on his deadbolt. A thin crescent of metal shaved from the faceplate, like a thumbnail had pressed and dragged down. He said after all of this happened that his cousin moved away. He kept the porch lights on all the time. He lived a little differently. He says if you ask him if he believes in SWs, he'll tell you that he respects the people that those stories belong to and the land they come from. He doesn't use the word where it doesn't belong. He said maybe it was a mimic, maybe it was a haint, maybe it was a not deer. He said what he does know is it was mimicking the voices of the people he loved. He said whatever name you choose, remember the rules. Don't answer a voice where it shouldn't be. Don't let anything talk you out of your car on a lonely road. And if it looks almost right, go inside, lock the door, and wait for daylight.
A little birdie told me we're telling Appalachian ghost stories, so I thought I'd sprinkle in a tale or two. So here's the thing, you guys. I'm currently in Appalachia. I'm on the Chocolates family property. And the thing about growing up in Appalachia is you know not to mess with the woods or the mountains or the ancient things that reside there because there's some kind of weird energy going on, okay? You know, you've seen people that say, like, as soon as the sun goes down, you have to close the curtains and lock the doors. And if you're out in the woods and you hear someone calling your name, no, you didn't. Or if you hear a baby crying, no, you didn't. Those things are true, is what I'm trying to tell you. We all know it. We all know it up in this part of the world. And everyone has stories that are spooky ooky that fall into this narrative. So, here's the thing. The woods here be thick, right? This is the same mountain range as Scotland. You know how they also have, their mountains have a mystical, the Highlands, they have a mystical feeling to them. There's some kind of energy. I'm telling you, we have the energy here too, but they got more castles and fairies, and we got more trees and beer stores. I don't know what to tell you. We got the short stick in this situation. And we got demons, apparently. The woods are so thick, it'll be the brightest, sunniest day, and as soon as you cross into the forest line, pitch blackness. Like I could give you, see how it's just, there's no light. It's a sunny day. The sun is out, birds are singing, flowers are blooming, and ancient demons are lurking right there waiting to snatch me. If something comes out of the woods when I'm telling my tale, please let me know in the comments. If that does happen, I'm sorry to say it'll be too late. Unfortunately, I will have been snatched by the time that you comment. So, as children, everyone in my neighborhood, I say loosely because the houses are so spread out, we had nothing to do and nowhere to go, so we would all just hang out in the woods. And a few of our friends who live in that direction behind the camera, their families own a lot of property, like dozens of acres. And we'd play in the woods. And the problem with their property, though, is at the end of their property, it results in a cliff. No joking, a straight up cliff, a rock face cliff. Like if you fall off, you will die. That kind of cliff. So, we're out in the woods one day, and we're playing hide and seek tag. That was a game of choice throughout my life. I don't know why. Very dangerous. Where were the parents? We're out in the woods, and we say, okay, Sarah's gonna be it. Everyone else hide. And we all go and hide. We start playing hide and seek. Sarah's running around. She's finding us. And one of the places we would hide was this abandoned little shack out in the woods. This little shack. And no one ever claimed it. There was an overgrown road leading up to it. But just out in the woods, there's a shack. And there was stuff in the shack. There was furniture. It looked very abandoned. It was overgrown. The plants had come inside. You know, this much dust on every surface. We'd play in the shack. That was one of the hiding spots. I was hiding in the shack. Sarah found me, and we're like, oh, okay, great. Did I win? No, you didn't win, Megan. I was like, oh, okay, who's left? And they're like, oh, Benny. Benny, we haven't found Benny yet. And we say, oh, okay, cool. And we're on Benny's property, so we know Benny knows all the good hiding spots. So we're all looking for Benny. We're searching, and 45 minutes go by. No Benny. And also, the sun was going down. And we said, uh-oh, we know, sun goes down, you get out the woods. So we said, okay, Benny, you won. Benny, you won. You won, Benny. Benny does not appear. Benny does not come out. So we all start searching for him, and we go, uh-oh, Benny's parents ain't gonna like this. So we're walking, and we go very far out on the property, just thinking he's on the outskirts. And when there were two of us looking for him, and all of a sudden we're yelling, Benny, Benny. We hear, help, help. That's Benny's voice. So we kind of look at each other and acknowledge that, like, oh my God, was that him? Yeah, that was him. So we start kind of like moving faster, and we're like, Benny, Benny, is that you? And we hear, over here. So we take off running faster, and we're running because it's getting dark. We're like, oh my God, what happened to Benny? Running. And all of a sudden, one of our buddies had been catching up with us and yells, stop, the cliff. So we stopped. 10 more feet, we would have run right out of the forest line and off the cliff, because that's the direction the voice had been coming from. So we're terrified, and we say, did Benny fall off the cliff? We look down, no Benny. And we would know, because it's, it's a giant cliff face, because at the bottom they built a road. There's no Benny down there. We say, we just heard Benny. We were running towards him. No Benny. So we're freaked out. We all immediately decide, you know what? Better him than us. And we start running back to the house. We run back to Benny's house, and we're like, who's going to tell his parents? As soon as we get out of the woods back onto his property, Benny is in his house. He's in his yard, or not in his house. He's at his house. He's in the yard with his mom. She's like passing out popsicles. And we say, we were looking for you. He goes, oh, I didn't even play this round. What? As soon as the round started, I had to pee, and I decided to come home. So who did we hear in the woods? Whatever we heard was trying to lure us off of the cliff. And you know what's really crazy about those woods is some of the local lore, and not even lore, this was a thing that happened, is I guess there was some kind of robbery. Hello? Hello? Oh my God, who is out here? Benny? That you? Anyway, the lore, I think the story goes that there's a little airport nearby, and I guess some guy had stolen a bunch of, like, I think it was like money, drug money. I don't know, he was in on something and he tried to steal the money, and I guess his getaway plane wasn't doing what planes are supposed to do, and it crashed somewhere up here in the mountains. They never found the guy, and they never found the money. A few years ago, we're driving home, and there's police cars everywhere on these back roads, and we were like, why are there all this caution tape and police officers, like, what's going on? Apparently, they had found a shed out in the woods near Benny's property, and inside the shed was a body. And the body, because they dated it, the body had been there for like a very long time from when this plane incident occurred. So when we were playing in the shed as children, we were not alone. The body was in the shed. So that's terrifying to think about. Oh, yeah, the energy is weird here. When all of there used to be no houses up here either. This was just farmland owned by Mr. Stinger. And we bought our property from Mr. Stinger, and then everybody else started buying property from Mr. Stinger. When all of these houses were being developed or like built, they were unearthing a lot of artifacts, Native American artifacts like arrowheads and pottery and things of that nature. So all I'm saying is the energy up here on this hill, up on these hills, you too, Benny's property, we're not alone. And that's why you ignore the voices. And if there's a baby crying, no, there ain't. You hear your voice? No, you didn't. You hear your name? No, you did not. In our house, we truly think that the Native American spirits also like to hang out with us. And anyone in my family knows the witching hour occurs at 3 a.m. 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. You better not be in the living room or any main part of the house. You need to be in your bedroom with the door closed. My older sister has had the scariest encounters in our house. She's had the most encounters overall. But yeah, I haven't had many. We think the spirits are friendly, but they just like their time, and that's their time to have the house. So like we give it to them. And sometimes when we're up really late in the living room watching TV, I was in there once watching TV. I didn't realize what time it was. And I thought to myself, oh, it's almost the witching hour. I better go to bed soon. But I was watching my show and lost track of time. And all of a sudden I hear this huge crash in the kitchen. And I was like, what was that? And I look at my phone, it's 3 a.m. on the dot. And I said, I'm sorry, I know. And I picked up my stuff and I went to my room and called it a night. But that's nothing on Lexi's stories. Lexi's stories, ooh, she's been down in the rec room before. Her and her boyfriend, Nick, they were home alone. All of a sudden, right above them in the kitchen, they heard the kitchen table chairs being dragged around on the hardwood floors. They got so scared because they thought someone had broken into the house. That's how much noise it was making. And they could hear the chairs like moving. It's like, oh my God, why is it over there? Why is it over there? They had to call the rest of the family to come home, and they were armed with baseball bats when we found them, and they were standing outside. They're like, someone's in the house. We had to search the house. No one was in the house. Someone might have been in the house. Maybe not a someone, but something was in the house. Ooh, anyway, I didn't get dragged off, so woo, that's a win.
What would you do if every night at 3:03 a.m. someone walked by your house whistling, but you weren't allowed to look, or there was going to be really bad consequences? Because that's what this story is about. The poster has lived in this neighborhood since they were 6 years old, and they say that now being 13, they can see that there's only two weird things about this neighborhood. That's the Whistler and the good luck. It's a super nice neighborhood. There's no crime. The weather seems to always be perfect, and everyone describes it as a million little blessings. When they first moved to this neighborhood, it was whenever her little sister was born and she was sick. She had issues breathing and nothing could really be done about it. And as soon as they moved there, all of a sudden she was miraculously perfect. Like nothing ever happened, and it just wasn't explainable. But like they said, a million little blessings. When they moved into this neighborhood, they were also greeted by the welcoming committee, which came with macaroni salad, a gift basket, and the rules. The whistling would start at 3:03 and end precisely at 3:05. Said it would never harm them as long as you don't try to look outside. They said that anyone who tried to look would have the worst luck or worse. It was like a black cloud would come over them, and anything that could go wrong would go wrong. In a folder they give to you, it has the articles of freak accidents, car crashes, ruined lives, and they also said not everyone dies, but the life goes out of them. Because her dad is from the islands, he believes in things like this, and he actually took it very seriously, which is what the welcoming committee hopes that everyone will do, but some people don't. Her dad becomes a part of this welcoming committee because, just as they said, every single night on the dot 3:03, a whistler comes by. It starts light at the beginning of the street, and they could hear it fade out as it works its way down the street. Because of the really good luck, you can imagine that a lot of people don't want to leave, because as long as you don't look outside, you have all this amazing luck. But there are a few who do, and sometimes houses go up for sale and new people move in. So her dad is now a part of that committee to help welcome people. So some new neighbors move in, and the dad says that it goes very well. They believed everything they said, and there should be no issue. One night, those parents are going out, and they ask if their son can come over and spend the night with our poster's family.
And of course, her parents say yes. The little boy is dropped off. He's 12 years old, very curious, and she can tell right off the bat this is not going to be good. So immediately he starts asking about the Whistler and giving his assumptions on who in the neighborhood it could be. But she quickly shuts him down and is like, we don't talk about that. They end up playing games and eating popcorn and being kids. Pretty soon, they've stayed up really late like kids do, and it is nearing 3 a.m. So the little boy asks, have you ever tried looking? And she's like, absolutely not. We don't do that. We're not allowed to do that. And plus, our dad locks the blinds and hides the keys. But something that he quickly points out is that, well, your dad doesn't actually hide the key like mine does. I saw the key. It's laying on his dresser on his key ring. She doesn't believe him, and she goes down the hall to peek in her parents' room to check and see if the keys are actually laying there. Now, this whole time, her little sister is in the living room with the boy. As soon as she gets down the hall, she hears the Whistler coming. Then she realizes, oh, my little sister. So she runs back to the living room, and her little sister and this bad little boy are facing the front window. The Whistler's getting closer and closer. She can see the little boy fumbling with the lock. He does have the key, and he is unlocking the blinds. So she quickly rushes and grabs her sister, pulls her sister towards her, facing away from the window now, covers her eyes, closes her eyes, and just tells her, just don't look. The Whistler is literally right outside of their house. She's calling the little boy's name, and he is not saying a word. Where she's standing holding her sister, she can still, with her eyes closed, reach the window. So she's reaching for the blinds to pull them shut, and she does pull them shut. Again, she says the little boy's name, and he turns and looks at her and just screams. Obviously, this triggers the parents to start running out of the room. They're wanting to know what the hell is going on. He was completely pale. He had literally bitten a line in his lip and it was bleeding. And the dad rushes out in a panic and asks what happened. And they tell him he looked. All of a sudden, there's a knock at the door. Her mom is like, don't answer it. Don't answer it. Now there's constant beating on the windows, on the doors, front, back, just something wailing on this house. Then the mom whispers to the dad, call the police. And the knocking stopped. And then a polite tap, tap, tap. Police is at the front door. The voice from outside sounded exactly like the mom. It was repeating her words back to her. And it would say, police, call the police, tap, tap, tap. And then it kept saying, police, 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 police. So then the knocking gets super aggressive again. I mean, it sounds like a freaking sledgehammer, like someone's trying to break the door in. This happened the entire night until the sun came up. So the next day around lunchtime, her parents walk the little boy home and go inside and have to tell his parents what happened and what he did. And they said that by Thursday of that week, the little boy and his parents were packing into a moving truck and leaving. But the thing she noticed the most was how tired they looked. And she assumed that either it was just from the stress or the bad luck, or that maybe they opened the blinds too so that their kid wasn't the only one that had seen it and he wasn't alone. There would be no more sleepovers at her house, and the dad now hides the key.
Hi guys, I'm going to tell you some creepy things that have personally happened to me while living in the Appalachian Mountains. So, my family cemetery is across the road from my parents' house, but they own all the property, and it's pretty close to their house. And when my grandfather passed away and he was buried up there, every night there would be like a flickering light up around his grave, and there was no lights up there, like no solar lights, nothing like that. And it happened for a couple years, and then eventually it stopped, but it always happened at the same time every night. So, kind of creepy. At my parents' house, they had wooden rocking chairs outside on the porch, and they rock by themselves sometimes at night. Also, my parents, they built a log cabin, and that's where I grew up. And log cabins, whenever there's temperature changes, the logs constantly expand and contract. So we're assuming this is what it was, but one night, it was late at night and we was all asleep, and there's just constant, like, thumping outside of the house. Like, it was so loud, it was deafening, and it was probably one of the scariest things, because we honestly have no idea what it was, but I couldn't even describe the sound because it was so creepy. And the only thing we could think of is it was probably the logs expanding and contracting because it was really, really cold. It was actually came an ice storm, so that's what we think it was. A few years ago, a distant family member passed away, but they lived up the same holler that I used to live up, and the moment that they took their last breath, the power went off in the whole holler.
So I'm just gonna come right out and say it. The creepiest thing ever, probably in the history of what has happened so far in my haunted house, officially happened last night. Officially. 100%. So far, nothing can top this one. So, my fiance and I were laying in bed, going to sleep. Great British Baking Show is obviously playing in the background. Nothing else can relax me more. And he's like, stop taking the covers. Stop pulling the covers off me. Mind you, I'm pretty much asleep. I am not moving. I am a log at this point. So I scooch my boot all the way to the other side of the bed, so where we are not touching, there is no way he can tell me that I'm pulling the covers off of him. So he turns the TV off. We are now falling asleep in silence, and out of nowhere, literally nowhere, at the same exact time, we both hear, Mom, Mom. Excuse me, I am not a mother. We both heard it. And it was coming from the bottom, like where your feet are, like that part of the bed. So I'm literally at a loss for words. The only thing I do know is that around the 1920s, 1930s, there was a fire in this home, in my house, that a family was in, and I've read that they did not make it out. So, like, I don't get it.
First off, when I say feral, I ain't talking about no monster. This ain't no Hills Have Eyes type shit, right? I mean people that have lived apart from society for so long that they have quite literally adapted different. They move differently than we do, right? And Appalachia, with its 500 million-year-old cave system that's 90% unexplored, is the one place that theory actually holds water. Listen, long before the U.S. existed, indigenous tribes like the Cherokee talked about the moon-eyed people. These were large-eyed, pale people that lived underground, would come out at night because they avoided sunlight, and sometimes they would even kidnap children. And boom, early settlers move in. Then the stories start about entire families living off in the mountains, separated from society, far away from town, avoiding outsiders, and speaking in a weird dialect. Coal mines start crisscrossing the region in the 1800s and the 1900s, and some coal miners would actually get stuck underground for weeks at a time. When they would emerge, they would have pale skin, be disoriented, unable to tolerate sunlight. Look, some locals still talking about some miners didn't come back up. Well, where the fuck did they go, Susan? Are they still down there? Listen, hear me out. If humans did live underground for generations, we would eventually adapt. We would have larger pupils to see in the dark. We would have pale skin from lack of sunlight. We would move differently because we're quite literally crawling around caves. We would also have heightened hearing and sensitivity to light and night vision, like I said. So I'm not talking about on some supernatural shit. Talking about what happens when biology evolves in the dark. Like, think of the fish that live at the bottom of the ocean. They look wild. Listen, for decades, hikers and rangers in Appalachia have reported seeing naked people in the woods running through the trees. They've also reported people being covered in mud, crawling on all fours. And then there's the reports of whistling or mimicking voices in the woods, which, on that note, don't you ever go in the woods whistling. And then they report structures that don't look like they were made by campers, like they're made out of sticks. And that's also when we note the out of there if you ever encounter something like that. These official or unofficial reports never say feral people. They usually say unidentified human presence, and then the case is closed or it's sealed. And I'm not saying that there's an underground society beneath our feet. All I'm saying is in the national parks, especially in Appalachia, people tend to go missing downward, like into the cave system, into underground mine shafts, into underground tunnels. So my question becomes, Who's actually down there, or what is down there? Is it wildlife that we've never documented? Is it cave adapted humans? I'm talking like small isolated communities that went underground generations ago. Or is it something else completely? I'm just saying, y'all ever seen The Descent? Listen, I'm not claiming an answer. All I'm saying is the feral cave people theory is the only one that fits the pattern.
That's the dark-eyed children. Okay, if you haven't heard of the dark-eyed children before, they mostly take the form of a child, and they have soulless dark eyes. These creatures, these beings, supposedly incredibly intimidating and menacing, even though they might present themselves as a child. People who come in contact with them report just this overwhelming fear and this overwhelming dread and just this sense that they're just like in the presence of a predator. Okay. Now, the dark-eyed children mostly aren't going to just come out and attack you from people that have interacted with them or claims to have interacted with them. It seems like they always want to try to lure you out of your home, which kind of goes back to the old, lores and tales of vampires about how they had to be invited in. If they can't come in, they want you to come out. Okay, some classic stories about dark-eyed children is getting a knock at your door early in the morning or late at night, and extremely pale child at the door. They mostly try to keep most of their body covered up with hoods or scarves or sunglasses, and they're going to want to invite you outside, and they're going to pretend that they need help, that there's some kind of a danger going on. Now, the other ones that people report are talking about in parking lots. Okay, they'll see like a pretty empty parking lot, kind of like a Walmart late at night, and there will be some kid that appears to be like kind of crouched down or maybe in the fetal position or kind of crying. And when somebody pulls up to help them, the kid looks up and they see those dark, soulless eyes, and then immediately they no longer look like they need help. They immediately look like they're very, very intimidating and they're after you. Okay. There's a lot of theories on this, on whether this is even a, real thing, obviously, but it seems like they don't really want to like take you or hurt you. It's almost like they just want you to be afraid, and they just get that fear. And that goes back to tons of different legends about creatures called fear eaters, which present themselves in many, many different ways. If you ever want to look up a classic fear eater story that was reported massively before modern technology, look up Old Green Eyes. And it was actually during the Civil War. Tons of Civil War survivors talked about how after there'd be extremely bloody battles, they would see what a creature they would call Old Green Eyes, which was just a lurking dark shadow that seemed to crawl across the ground, and it would stay next to soldiers who had been mortally wounded, and they're terrified because they know they're about to die, and it would almost be like getting that energy from that. Dark-eyed children seem to be the same way when people talk about them. There was a journalist named Brian Bethel that was reporting on a news story there. So this is how the story got out and got so big. This was back in the 90s. He was reporting on a news story. He was packing his stuff, getting in his car, ready to leave, when there were two children approached his car in a parking lot. And at first, he's got the windows up and everything, and they approached the car and they were asking for spare change. And he's like, no, go on. And then he noticed that these kids had completely dark, soulless eyes, and their voice felt like it changed, like in its tempo and its range. It went from a childlike voice to a very deep and powerful, manly voice, but these were small children. And he said they kept yanking on the door handles, and they were trying to get him to open the doors any way they could and preventing him from leaving by standing in front of the car. But they were no longer asking for change. They were just making these crazy threats on his life. And he said that he had such an overwhelming fear that he almost passed out. He almost lost consciousness. And he said it was almost like they were draining his life. Like the more he got upset, the more he got worked up. He said the weaker he actually felt before he just ended up punching the gas and going. He said that he looked in the rearview mirror and all of a sudden they're gone. I mean, he's just several feet away from where he was just at, and there was no trace of him left. He was a renowned journalist. He never did any kind of reports like this ever again or before. He was not like a ghost guy or anything. He was just your regular old news journalist. So it's really neat that, I don't see why he would make this up. In fact, it would probably only hurt his career to make this up. But I definitely do believe if there was something out there that wanted to make you have your guard down, the best way to present itself is that of a child. There's nothing in there.
Do you guys think evil can harm you? Because the email that I got for tonight's True Scary Story is about just that. It's about a girl in Appalachia who doesn't even believe in the paranormal until she starts experiencing it every single time she's about to get physically injured so badly that she has to go to the hospital. And this happens on numerous occasions. A little bit of a backstory about Allie. She is 21 years old and she has lived in the same house her entire life. Now, Allie does not believe in the paranormal, or at least she didn't believe in the paranormal until these experiences started happening happening to her. When she was younger, she used to like to go to carnivals, and she would go to carnivals with like her mother or another family member, and every single time she was at a carnival, a psychic medium would come up to her and tell her that there was a dark energy attached to her and that it was dangerous and she needed to get rid of it. Now, she never put any merit into this because her mother would always tell her, listen, there is no such thing as dark entities. All these people want is money. That's all they're doing. They're trying to scare you to get money out of you. Little did she know that these psychic mediums were probably not wrong. Now, when Allie turned 14 years old, she started noticing that she had extremely bad luck. Number one, she was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which is usually genetic or you get it at a very young age, and she was 14 years old. There is no record of anybody in her family having diabetes or any type of immune disorder whatsoever. After she was diagnosed with diabetes, every single year after that, she would end up in the hospital or urgent care for some type of ailment. And she wouldn't just end up in the hospital for like a day, she would end up in the hospital for a few days. Some of the things include exercise-induced asthma, behind-the-ear eczema, tailbone cysts, scalp psoriasis, migraine, now severe broken bones, and we're about to get into that. Now it gets on to the scary part. So in May of 2025, she's coming home from her spring semester from college, and she has a bunch of things planned for summer. For instance, she has a 2-week European cruise planned and another trip planned. She also just turned 21, so she's able to legally drink now, and she's super excited about that. On June 6th, she was playing basketball with her brother and 2 hometown friends. Well, she's playing basketball, and suddenly she hears something. Something is coming from the woods. It sounds like a bunch of voices whispering in unison. She zones in for a second because she's trying to hear what these voices are saying, but she can't make anything out. And then she realizes, okay, what am I doing? I have to play basketball. So she pivots. With the force of her defender, she shattered her ankle. Well, technically, it was the bottom of her tibia and her fibula. And there went her cruise, because when she was at the hospital, it was so severe that the doctors literally asked her if she had fallen off of a roof or gotten into a car accident. And when she told them no, they didn't believe her. Her dad had to corroborate the story for her. The medical name for the bone break that she got was literally called an explosion fracture. She's actually put in a knee scooter because of this. She cannot walk. And one thing that she never told anybody was the whispers that she heard. And also, she doesn't remember how she fell down. The only person that she did tell was her best friend that she met in college, who she absolutely adores, who believes in the paranormal, and who is actually the one who made her think that maybe everything that's happening to her is correlated with the paranormal. You are absolutely going to see why when we get further on into the story. Well, her and her dad love sprint car racing, and every year from July 24th to July 27th, they go up to the track and they watch these races. Well, her and her dad grab their camper and they go up to watch the races for the weekend. The race was supposed to go from Friday to Saturday, and they checked the weather, and it was 80-degree weather. It was absolutely beautiful outside. That's what the weather was supposed to be like. The first night that they get there is a Thursday, and they're having a really good time. They grilled out, they stayed out late by the campfire, and they're just having a really good time. Well, at one point, her father walks into the camper to get something, and she's outside by herself, when suddenly she hears something again. She hears that weird collective whispering. She said that she has never felt more helpless in her entire life because her crutches were leaning up against the camper and she was in her scooter chair. So all she could do was like try to scoot towards her crutches, and as she's still hearing this whispering. Mind you, they are right in the Appalachian Mountains at this point. Her dad finally comes out, and as soon as he steps foot outside, the whispering just stops like that. Now she's too freaked out to stay up. So she tells her dad, she's like, listen, I gotta go back inside. I gotta go to sleep. I can't be out here right now. So her dad helps her get back inside and helps her get in bed. She did not get a wink of sleep that night. Next morning, she wakes up. She's really excited for the race. And as soon as the race is about to start, a pop-up thunderstorm comes. And where is it over? Right directly over the track. So her and her dad are super bummed about this, but they're like, you know what? It's a 2-day race. So we have tomorrow to look forward to. Tomorrow comes, same thing happens. There's a cloud right over the track. So they basically went there for nothing. So they were a little upset about that, but Allie seems like a really positive person. So she's like, you know what? This is fine. Like, we'll just stay till Sunday. We'll have a good time. And that's exactly what they do. And nothing paranormal happens to her. Because nothing paranormal is happening to her, she's like, you know what? I think I just am anxious. I think that's why. All this bad stuff is happening to me. I really think I'm just anxious. I don't think I'm hearing anything. I think this is just hallucinations driven by anxiety. That is until she gets home on August 13th. Well, August 14th, she's preparing to go back to school and she's getting a new dorm. So she's excited because the doctor has just cleared her and she is able to drive now. She just can't stand. Well, that night around 11 p.m., she's packing the remainder of her nighttime products that she had used before bed. Well, Allie has 2 antique dressers in her room, and because of the way that they are shaped, when you put them together, there's like a little gap in between them. Well, she's reaching over to grab the toner off of her dresser when in between the cracks of her dresser, she hears someone faintly go, Alexandra. So Allie is just like, what the hell is that? Because her real name is Alexandra, but no one ever calls her that unless she's in trouble. That's not a name that is ever used. So she's thinking in her head, okay, you know what? This is an old house. It makes noises. I'm just anxious again. Like, this is nothing. So she turns around to put her toner in her bag when she hears someone go, Alexandra. This time in a normal pitch voice. Like, she could not ignore it this time. This time she heard it. So she's trying to rationalize it at this point. She is going through all the logical explanations in her head. Like, okay, my brother is downstairs doing homework, my mom is asleep in her bed, and my dad is not even in the house. As she's sitting there trying to rationalize everything, she hears a guttural scream go, Alexandra! This scared her so badly to her core that she literally started slipping in between the knee scooter and the dresser. And as she is falling, she feels like she is falling in slow motion, like time has stopped. And then she hears that whispering again, and it goes on for like 2 minutes. She says that she knows that this is not possible, but it happened. She was falling for 2 minutes, even though it was supposed to be like a couple seconds. She ends up cracking her tibia straight clean in half. So bad you could see half of the bone popping out of the middle of her shin. It looked like this. She's in the hospital for 2 days. She has to get 2 plates and 6 more screws. And then to top it all off, she had a pretty large pin put into her shin on the previous ankle surgery. It was for an external fixator, which they ended up removing after surgery. Her tibia ended up cracking in that weakened spot. Their question to you, is this just a bunch of anxiety-induced hallucinations mixed with a serious string of bad luck? Or is she haunted? And if she is, what the can she do, because she cannot live like this? Her exact words were, it's a special kind of painful, boring, frustrating, and scary as hell experience.
I took my dog for a walk last night, and to walk the dog we have to go next to the grave place. The place with gravestones where the dead people sleep all the time. And it was nighttime, and I always walk by here. And I don't go in the graveyard. I'm not crazy. I'm not going to be in a graveyard at 11 o'clock at night. I was right next to the graveyard, and there's a chain link fence preventing me from having to interact with any ghosts. But I saw a gravestone in there that I needed to take a picture of because I had to use it as a meme, is what I decided. And a little bit of me was like, it's kind of a trifling thing to do, to take a picture of a gravestone at night. Like, what if that person doesn't want to be photographed, you know? And I had already been hearing footsteps that weren't there. Like, I'd hear someone walking and I'd look around and there was no one. And that had not apparently been enough to deter me from getting away from the graveyard near the forest at 11 o'clock at night. But the dog was calm, so I'm like, I think everything is fine. Usually dogs can sense a spirit, from what I've been told. So I was there and I was taking pictures, and then right as I was done taking pictures, from the tree line, I heard this terrifying scream, guttural sound. It did not sound like a coyote or a man. It sounded like a secret third demon. And I ran away, and the dog ran away in the wrong direction. And we triangle ran as fast as we could circularly towards the house. Do you want to see the picture that I thought was worth dying for last night? This is it.
If you've ever felt watched or seen something just beyond the light, you're not alone. Share your story in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe. As always, stay safe, stay aware, and question everything.